Have you ever witnessed a defendant so brazen and disrespectful in court that they actually lit up a joint in front of the judge? Well, meet Spencer Boston, one of the most outrageous defendants in the court's history. If you want to know more details about him, stay with us till the end of this video as we have a list of 9 most disrespectful defendants in the court's history. Let's start with number 9, Alan Boston. Number 9 on this list is a young man named Spencer Allen Boston from Tennessee, USA. In January 2020, he found himself in a court hearing for possession of marijuana. But instead of keeping his head down and following the rules, Boston had other plans. As soon as he stepped up to the podium, he pulled out a joint from his pocket and lit it up. To the surprise of everyone in the courtroom, Boston took a few puffs and then turned to the audience, declaring, "Marijuana should be legalized, man." Judge Haywood Barry was not amused and held Boston in contempt of court for his disrespectful behavior. But that didn't stop Boston. As Judge Barry was delivering his ruling, Boston continued to argue with him and even flipped him off. Unfortunately for Boston, his disrespectful behavior landed him in even more trouble than he was already in. He was charged with contempt of court, disorderly conduct, and simple possession of marijuana. He was also ordered to spend 10 days in jail for his actions. At number 8, we have Donta Wright. As the judge entered the courtroom, everyone held their breath. Donta Wright, one of the most disrespectful defendants the court had ever seen, was on trial for armed robbery, felony firearm, and conspiracy to conduct armed robbery. The prosecutor laid out a compelling case for Wright, detailing how she and her accomplices had carefully planned the robbery of a local convenience store. They had brandished weapons, threatened the store clerk, and made off with thousands of dollars in cash. Throughout the trial, Wright showed no remorse for her actions. She sneered at witnesses, rolled her eyes at the judge, and even dared to interrupt the prosecutor during cross-examination. But what really set Wright apart was her lack of concern for the consequences of her actions. She seemed to think that she was above the law and she could do whatever she wanted without repercussions. Next up is Allan McCarthy. Allan McCarthy was charged with making death threats to a judge who took his children away in a child custody case. Allan McCarthy's case gained national attention due to the severity of his threats towards the judge. He was furious with the judge's decision to take his children away, and he did not hold back in expressing his anger. McCarthy threatened to kill the judge and his family members. After his threats were reported, McCarthy was arrested and brought to court. The judge handling his case was understandably concerned for his safety and took extra measures to protect himself and his family. During the trial, McCarthy showed no remorse for his actions and continued to express his anger towards the judge. He even went as far as to interrupt the judge and the prosecution multiple times during the trial, showing a complete lack of respect for the judicial system. At number 6 is Michael Ray. Ray was charged with criminal trespassing, second-degree assault, making terrorist threats, and not wearing a seatbelt. During the trial, Ray showed a complete lack of respect for the court and the judge handling his case. He refused to follow the rules of the court, often interrupting the judge and speaking out of turn. He even went as far as to insult the judge and the court officers, making it clear that he had no intention of cooperating. Ray's charges stemmed from an incident in which he trespassed onto private property and assaulted someone. He also made terrorist threats towards the victim, causing significant fear and distress. For number 5, here we are in the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice in Detroit, Michigan, for the sentencing of 25-year-old Amanda Casale. Casale had been found guilty of driving under the influence and causing a head-on collision that killed 31-year-old Jerome Zerker and severely injured his fiancée, 31-year-old Brittany Johnson. The couple had 5 children together. Before sentencing, the court heard a powerful impact statement from the victim's children, read by his sister, Doreen Zerker.
"Look what you did to my life. You ruined everything I had, like my dad's life."
Judge Kiana Lillard apparently hears snickering from Casale's family sitting in the gallery.
"Whoever can sit here at a tragic moment like this and laugh and smile when somebody has lost a family member. This is a court of law. You cannot come down to the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice and act any way you want to act.
Judge Lillard then sentences Cassalle to serve 3 to 15 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections. Cassalle only serves 3 years and is then paroled in February 2020. As for Amanda's mother, Donna, she spends the night in jail and appears before Judge Lillard the next morning. At number 4, we have Austin Boone. Austin Boone found himself in court charged with speeding and possession of drug paraphernalia in the state of Kentucky when everything took an unexpected turn. Boone had been prepped by his attorney for days before the court hearing, but it all went south when the judge, Stephanie Burke, asked him a question. Boone's head went completely blank. The agreement was to plead guilty and pay a $44 fine, attend traffic school, and pay an additional $100 fine in the Harrison area to avoid 6 points on his license. But when asked if that was what he understood, Boone's response was shocking. He replied, "Well, if you played, please yeah, whatever agreement is okay." It was looking like a quick day in court for Boone, but then the bailiff noticed something odd about Boone's attire, specifically his trousers. This led to Boone being held in contempt of court for disrespecting the judge and being given a 10-day sentence in jail. Boone's disrespect towards the judge and lack of seriousness in court cost him a 10-day sentence. At number 3, we have Tobias Roman. Roman faced multiple charges, including attempted robbery, threatening with intent to terrorize, and exhibiting a deadly weapon for stalking a female employee at a mall. During the hearing, the judge asked standard questions, and when he heard Roman's name, he made a snarky comment, calling it quite a strange name for someone with multiple criminal charges. But what happened next was shocking. Roman told the judge to be quiet, and when given a final warning, he exited the courtroom with even more disrespect towards the judge. But things didn't end there. Roman was overheard threatening the judge with violence, and the judge had no choice but to sentence him to 8 months in prison for threatening a public official. All of his original charges were cleared, except for threatening with intent to terrorize, which resulted in 3 years in prison. At number 2 on the list, we have Camia Gamet. In a recent court case that made headlines, 31-year-old Camia Gamet was convicted of first-degree murder in the killing of her boyfriend, Marcel Hill. The evidence presented at the trial included the use of a frying pan, a floor lamp, and a large knife that she used to stab Hill 12 times. Despite the overwhelming evidence against her, Gamet claimed self-defense, insisting she believed Hill was an intruder. During the sentencing, Gamet appeared unfazed by the impact statement given by Hill's aunt, Deanna Banks Joyner. When the prosecutor spoke, she made no attempt to show remorse for her actions. Even when threatened with duct tape by the judge, Gamet continued to speak out. The judge ultimately condemned her actions, calling them one of the worst cold-blooded murders he had seen in a long time. He sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The last one on the list is Spencer Boston. He was charged with speeding and marijuana possession. However, instead of accepting the charges like a normal person, he decided to take a different route. 2 months after his charges, he stood in front of the judge and gave a speech about the unfairness of the marijuana law. He argued that it's a harmless drug that has been around since the 80s and 90s and that people deserve better. The judge was not impressed and tried to secure a trial date. But just when everyone thought the situation was over, Spencer shocked everyone by pulling out a joint and lighting it up in the courtroom. He was immediately ushered out by the court officer, and the judge added another count of marijuana possession, disorderly conduct, and contempt of court to his charges. Spencer was sentenced to spend 10 days in jail in the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice. As we wrap up this jaw-dropping look at the most disrespectful defendant in court history, one question remains. How did they think they could get away with it? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more shocking courtroom revelations.